Hello and welcome to another League of Legends video, and in this one we are going to look at the complicated topic of jungler tracking. However, if you're not a jungler, this is still for you. This is for all roles, and as such I will show you how jungler tracking can help you as a laner take control of the game as well as deny the enemy jungler those free ganks. Now of course this is imperative to being a jungler, so everything in this video will hopefully be relevant to you, and we will take a look at a few examples that have different types of tracking involved, whether by using plants, vision, extrapolation, locating the candy on the map, the objective that might draw attention to it, and hopefully us going through these examples together from a laner and a jungler perspective will give you the tools necessary for you to drastically increase your jungler tracking and take control of more games. Now before I go straight into it, I just want to announce that I've officially partnered with Higher Level Gaming, or HLG, a tutorial or coaching website dedicated to helping you improve, and I will be making long form exclusive content with them that you won't be able to get on YouTube or anywhere else. So if you've been interested in coaching or anything a bit more in depth from me, different positions and roles, VOD reviews, that's the place to go. So head to the link in the description as we prepare for a full launch, and use my referral code Virkayu with a small V when you sign up. It goes without saying that there's a lot that goes into tracking a jungler, including a lot of good foundational basics. Now to avoid boring those who are more advanced players and who know all of this already, we're going to cover those as they come up, and I'm not going to talk too much about ward placements. I'm just showing you some example wards here. If you're interested in common and good ward places to use to track the enemy jungler, I do advise looking at my vision guide, where I outline all vision locations on the map and which ones with examples are the most best to use in a variety of situations. You also have subtle hints in vision by plant usage. Now look very clearly in this replay, the Lee Sin hits a plant that goes over the Sejuani's blue buff. That means he knows that Sejuani's blue is still up and that she will most likely be heading there very shortly. And as he's doing his Krugs, he delays a little bit before pinging it out to his team, letting them know, hey, Sejuani's probably at her blue buff. And as a jungler, you should ping this out, you should keep track of things. And yes, this was a third-person replay, so it's much more easier to see the Scryer's bloom reveal itself on the map. But look at this example where I'm Zyra support in-game, the Yasuo's moving down to gank on the bottom side, and he hits a plant that just briefly shows on our vision in the river. Naturally, this is very much a blink and you miss it kind of thing because it was so narrow, and we had good vision from our lane push, so we were able to back away in any case. But it is just an example of why, as a jungler, as a support, anyone who maybe doesn't have to consistently focus on the CSing and the trading should consistently look at their minimap. Every role should consistently look at your minimap just to see those little tells show up, and they can give you a wealth of information. Now with the basics out of the way, we can look at the first of our core examples in a real world sense about how we use jungle tracking to take control of games, counter gank, and set up conditions that basically snowball a win very easily, just using some of these tools at our disposal in the game. Now this first game, I'm Warwick, I'm against an Evelyn, I have an Aurelia mid, and it's gonna be quite an interesting game because from the mid lane perspective, she helps track and put down the vision and react to that information as well as that I do. And when you have a jungler and mid synergizing like that, especially versus a power pick or a camouflage pick like the Evelyn, you can just deny them all ability to get fed, and as such cause the game to end very quickly. So with that in mind, I start on the red buff as I usually like to do with Warwick no matter what, and from there I can go across the map and take the other scuttle. And of course I'm getting a leash, which means my top laner will be late to show, and my bot lane tries to be super smart and fake leashes by showing up late to lane to pretend they help me on the blue. But given that Camille will have resources missing, whereas my bot lane will not, it's pretty obvious that I would have started on the red buff. Now from my point of view, their top laner showed up fine, the enemy bot is delayed, pretty obvious Evelyn started on the red. Now you also have to consider matchups, and I'm not going to get into this too much, but you have to sort of have an idea of what kind of route the enemy jungler will do based upon which champion they are actually playing. In this case, it's not Jarvan, so I'm not expecting, buff invade or level 2 cheese or anything like that. Most likely Evelyn's going to do some kind of red, raptors, blue, and scuttle on the top side combination. That's pretty typical. And the enemy team knows I will like to focus the single target camps, so I won't be hanging around on the top side too much. And thus, as I go and gank on the bottom side, you can see from their behavior, it's very clearly warded, and so the gank was never in the cards. Now I want to highlight something very important that the Aurelia does. She has warded over her mid lane bush in the raptor area of the Evelyn. That's a very silly ward. That means she hasn't been paying attention to where Evelyn's going to be. If you know your jungler just took the bottom side scuttle, you know that the enemy jungler started on the red and most likely went to raptors, she's not going to be on the bottom side of the map. She's going to be on the top side of the map, taking that scuttle and her blue buff. That means the most likely ganking area is going to come from that top side. However, there is a pro to the fact that she warded there, and that's because it's warded and she has vision, she can hug that side of the lane. Now you'll notice I'm moving up the river and Evelyn shows for that level 3 gank on the top side, just like I predicted, and I'm there to counter gank it, and basically, obviously Evelyn missed her Q, but even if she fully committed, my fear was ready and it was too far into the lane that the Zed and Evelyn wouldn't have won that trade, not versus level 3 Warwick. Well, that's great. We have some information from the Evelyn. We know where she was. I pressed tab and see 17 CS. She obviously got a minion on the mid lane, and that means 4 camps were done, most likely red, raptors, blue, and the scuttle, which means her wolves and grump are going to be up. And this is where a bit of jungle sense and experience comes into play. I don't know for certain if she's going to go there, but I'm extrapolating based on the information I have at hand, and that's what you have to do. Extrapolate possible outcomes in your mind very quickly and decide which is the most likely course of action for the Evelyn. In this case, if you know about jungle camp sequencing, you know, maximizing experience gain to get level 6 as fast as possible, she's going to do the wolves and the grump so she can go back and then look to do her Krugs and her second spawn raptors for that rubber banded XP. So I'm operating on this assumption just by the gank coming down and counting OCS. As such, I can do my raptors and Krugs. Now, in retrospect, I should have helped the Aurelia push out. She was pinging for me. My mind was focused on maximizing those AoE camps and ganking the top lane so I could buy that much needed Tiamat. Now, while this happens, the Evelyn does gank in the mid lane, and the Aurelia did a good job of hanging around the bottom side, tracking Evelyn in her mind as well, knowing she was most likely going to come from that top side, and because of this, puts a ward in the Scuttlebush. And given that Evelyn would have done the raptor camp after red, it will most likely spawn again around that 4:30 mark, and so the only camp available for her to do on the map would be the Krugs. So we can operate under the assumption that she took the Krugs and then went back to base. And now you'll note, while I've done my gank on the top lane, I've gone back to base, the first RNG Scuttle is spawning. Because of my delayed back timing, I won't be in position to go and take it. But because of the Aurelia's heads up ward in the river, Evelyn shows up right on cue to take it, and I'd been pinging in advance. There's a scuttle there, I'm heading that direction, let's collapse if she shows. Aurelia does her job, and because of the fact that she has significant level advantage and item advantage over the Evelyn, who consequently has not yet been back and just took the second spawn of the raptors, means she's pretty much free food. Now, because of this, I almost retreat back into my jungle, and I'm saying, well, this is amazing, a mid laner reacting to information and collapsing and tracking the jungler, fantastic. No, I go into her jungle, I put down a control ward, I put down a deep vision ward on her raptor camp, and then I want to fall back, do a full clear from bottom to top side, get my second red and get level 6. Now the vision I placed is important. So when you know where the enemy jungler's been and you know what camps are down, you can infer where she's going to go next. Because I invaded and her second raptor camp was gone, that meant she had taken the second spawn and obviously hadn't gone back yet, and pressing tab you can see her items would just be the starting items. That means the control ward I put down was for her level 6 spike, and the deep vision ward was because if she had respawned from her death versus the Aurelia, she was most likely going to go and take Gromp and Wolf's second spawn before heading down to her second red take. This means she would only be level 5, and oh look, from the Aurelia's perspective, Evelyn shows up going through that ward into the red buff area. Aurelia is obviously a good player, sees this information, wanders on over, burns her ultimate and her flash, and Evelyn is dead once again. This is the mid laner tracking and responding to the information I'm giving her through my own vision and my own map movements. I'm not really doing much of anything, I gank top lane, but the vision control we've had and the pings we've used have helped keep tabs on Evelyn throughout this early phase of the game. She's got no kills, we've known where she's going to be at every stage, and we've delayed a level 6 power spike, and Aurelia wasted her ultimate. This plays crucially into the next step. Because of that, and unfortunately a failed gank and dive on the top lane where I didn't really want to commit all my summoners and my ultimate, you can see her second grump is gone, but her second blue is up and I say thank you very much, that's free. And now you'll notice the death timer, she respawns as I'm doing this blue buff, right? Evelyn's gonna assume that the blue's taken, and even if it isn't, that's the only camp on the top side. And so as the enemy jungler, you have to start to enable your jungling instincts. What would you do if you're Evelyn in this case? You've been tilted by the enemy mid laner and you think everything's coming from her. So if you're Evelyn and you're camo, let's try and combine with the Zed ultimate and take the Aurelia off the map, get that shutdown gold. Now as Warwick, I've taken the blue buff, I loop around to take my Krugs, and notice my pathing here. I actually showed this example in an introduction clip in the previous video, but you'll see my pathing, how I hover around the back of the lane. I'm just having the sense that Evelyn has got no camps on the bottom side, she's got no camps on the top side, she's gonna need to make a gank, and the one lane she's gonna want to gank is the lane that's been shutting her down, and that's also pushing really heavily against her mid laner. So instead of pathing around the back of the lane, I know I can path in front of my tower. Because the minion wave is so far forward, I won't be detected, and if there is a gank as I expect, I can react very quickly. So that's the thought process behind my jungling at this stage. Now as you see from Aurelia's perspective, the Evelyn is pinging her, saying let's go, let's gank, and guess what, I show up in the nick of time. Unfortunately, Aurelia did not ping that Evelyn used her ultimate, so I wasn't actually sure if it was available. I flash E at the last second, ult the Z right afterwards, and Aurelia's red buff tick from the Evelyn kill manages to take the Z off the map. And basically the game here was done. Evelyn had been shut down, she had no flash, she was 0-3, the enemy mid was suffocated because the Aurelia was getting fed from the enemy jungler, all because her and myself had good vision control, understood where she was going to be, and reacted to the information given to us on the map. Even in this case, when I'm Ornn versus a top tier Hecarim pick, I shut him down by predicting his very unoriginal and simple pathing. I go full clear down to my red buff, and when I've done that, I go to hit my plant to see if the bottom side scuttle and blue buff are up. And if they are, then I can sort of infer where Hecarim has been this whole time. But fortunately for me, he ganks on the mid lane, which means he has most likely done a full top clear and a scuttle crab, and I'm right there in position to counter gank. My Silas does a nice job, and I pick up the double kill. Upon pressing tab, you can see Hecarim has 16 CS. Raptors, Red, Krugs, and Scuttle. That also means that I get a free bottom side Scuttle, and because the death timers are so short, I can hit the Scryer's Bloom in his jungle and reveal him on his wolves, because now what's the next step for Hecarim? Do a full bottom side clear. Now I don't have the resources to go and combat him. I am Ornn, he is still Hecarim, so what I do is I go do my Krugs, knowing that it would give him time to do those camps, allow me to buy a Bounty Cinder to go with my Stalker's Blade, and then I can sit in the lane and wait for him. And right on cue, as I arrive, here comes Hecarim, and if I could have that funny music, you know, when you freeze frame when you play it without being demonetized, I would, but otherwise you can look at his impending doom and laugh. So reacting to information and then drawing conclusions and extrapolating where he's going to be next based upon CS count, Scryer's Bloom vision, and jungle intuition, what is his next logical move, can give you a really huge early game and a lead, even if you are the much weaker jungler versus top tier meta picks. You have to react to the information you have on the enemy. They're gonna give you significantly more information that you can use, to the point that if you're a support, you can also take control of the game. Look at this one. So after a nice early roam, where Twitch and I both helped our kindred and burnt the flash of the Hecarim, our Twitch has red buff, and I see the Hecarim trying to be greedy on the top side, and because we're dominating this lane and pushing it out, which is what you should try and do if you have a lead, I see the Hecarim moving up the mid lane, and this is one thing I want to talk about before we close, and that's what is the candy on the map. And when you're kindred, that candy is your marks, because you know laners and junglers are gonna collapse on that thing like a singularity, and you're never gonna get it, or it feels like you're never gonna have the team willing to help you out. Now, because the Hecarim was such low health, I knew he was most likely going to try and do that Gromp and smite it just to replenish some HP, heal up himself through his kit, and deny that mark to my kindred. So what do? I walk on over as soon as I see him in the mid lane. I pop a ward over the wall, which he doesn't see because he's so focused on his target, but immediately throw my E, W, and Q out, and I grab myself a kill in the Hecarim while denying him that mark and encouraging my mid laner to say, wow, I didn't get a bot lane inting for once. So as a support, your deep vision and your moves can also impact the game, not just if you're mid laner, not just if you're a jungler. And because I placed a ward at the Gromp, even if Kindred doesn't get the mark, when we see the Hecarim respawn and go directly there, it doesn't matter, because if the Kindred is good, they'll know which mark is going to spawn in 40 seconds, and it won't be that difficult to contest given how far behind the Hecarim is, thanks to our bot lane collapses, and of course thanks to my Twitch for doing the 2v1 with his red buff while I went off and invaded. And I know it doesn't go in too much about jungle intuition, but that's usually combination of all these tools at once, creating a vortex of information that's sort of like your pseudo spider sense, and playing around that with the core information given to you by the enemy jungler CS count, vision, and so on can give you such a huge advantage over the enemy and hopefully help you to win those games and become a better jungler and a better laner. Please, laners, help your junglers. If you work together, you can see what's possible. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you were able to enjoy and learn something. Please like, share, and comment if you did. Consider subscribing if you would like more League of Legends and jungle videos just like this one. And as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial.